And good morning all, Gary here. Real quick study here today. This is a video I had done a few months back. It's actually the first video I put together for my Patreon page. And I've taken the video and sped it up quite a bit just to share some of the process in this little painting. So it is a 6x9 piece of Arches 140 pound watercolor paper. And I'm going with a really simple composition here. For the sky, I just dropped in some yellow ochre, a real wet mixture of it, and I dabbed out a lighter area there where I would have the trees. Wasn't sure how the sky would show through on my tree painting. And of course, I wasn't sure what colors I was using on the tree, so better be safe than sorry. I just dabbed it out and just left a little bit lighter in behind the trees. So super simple composition. Couple of trees and a guy climbing a hill. Now I wanted it to be bright, seeing as it's a simple little setup. I wanted the trees to be bright, so I'm using a pretty solid mixture of cadmium yellow there. For the darker underside of the tree, I'm going to put a couple of layers in here, I believe. Just using some mixture of sap green and ultramarine for that portion, the underside of the tree. And then I'll go over to the other tree with the same sort of colors. Leaving little gaps in the trees so that the light shows through, and then I can put some branches in there later. I mean, they're kind of ridiculous trees, but they're somewhat grounded in reality. So this guy's getting a little more green treatment. And for the underside, I'm using some undersea green, it's called. It's kind of a blue-green type color, and I really like it. It goes on quite nice, provides a nice contrast, and gives it a good look for the underside of the foliage. So for the mound or the hill, I'm using, again, cadmium yellow. I wanted this thing to be bright and kind of jump out and stand on its own. So cadmium yellow, drop in some sap green. I mentioned my board's on a tilt, so the paint, a slight tilt that is, and just letting the paint run down and do its thing. Now, there's my like and subscribe sign, so please like and please subscribe. Hey, by the way, thanks to everyone who has joined so far. I really appreciate it. Crazy numbers, it's awesome. Thanks so much. So, back to the painting. I dropped in some darks in the foreground there, a Payne's Gray, because I decided partway through that the hill was a little bit lame on its own, so I'm putting some rock structure in the foreground. So I got a chunk of credit card there. Don't look at the numbers on it. And I'm just etching out some rocks with the edge of an old credit card. And I felt that made the hill just a little more interesting, because I am going to have rocks on top of the hill as well at the base of those trees. That's why the trunk only comes down so far. I am going to put in some rocks in the top of the hill. People always ask, do you ink first or watercolor first? And the answer always comes back on Facebook. I see everybody answering the same way. It could be either or. So in this case, I'm actually doing the watercolor first. It's nice to see if the painting will stand up on its own, and often what I do, if it does work on its own, I get to the point before the inking, if it looks good on its own, I might just leave it. More often than not, though, I put the ink in because my preference, I actually like the look of the ink on the watercolor. So here we're just going to etch in some rocks and draw my little guy in there. Now, if you're wondering about composition of the guy, I like to make them look interesting. Kind of a carrot shape there. And some spindly little legs, and one would wonder why he's standing out there. Now for the hill here, I grabbed some darker green. I think it's some olive green and a bit of ochre, I think. And I'm just doing some dry brush to give that foreground a bit of texture. It is closer to the viewer, whoever happens to be standing over here. So we're just providing a bit of texture. And again, just make it a little more interesting. My rocks are a combination of Payne's Gray, Ultramarine, and Burnt Sienna. I just dabbed in a little bit of wet of the Payne's Gray first and then dropped some color in at the base. And now it's starting to look a little more interesting. It has a little more character. I picked up this fan brush. I'd never used it before, so I thought I'd try it and apply some texture. Kind of worked. A little bit hesitant in using it, but I think I'll just leave it at that. Now, seeing as the guy is quite a ways in the distance, there's not much point in providing any expressions on him. His body language pretty well describes what he's all about. So for skin tones, it's just yellow ochre, a bit of red, and a bit of blue. Watered out. I'm putting mustard colored pants on him because when I was a kid, I had a mustard bathing suit. Like a kid, I'm talking like 2 or 3, I had this mustard colored bathing suit, and it's ingrained in my head. So when I create characters that are like that, I tend to use mustard pants and mustard shirts. Now I'm going in with the spotter brush and I'm just adding some branches in the opening of the tree while my guy was drying. And I kind of wanted him to stand out a bit, so I painted in a red shirt. But then here I am lifting out, trying to create a highlight on it, like there's some kind of light shining down on him. And I took out all the red. But still, it's okay. At this point, I'm saying I could probably go back in and touch them all up with ink and, fix the whole scene. Now, I wanted to make the hill look like it was fairly high, and so I've just painted in a background like mountains or trees, so a very faded ultramarine to give the painting some depth. Even though it's only a tiny little 6x9, I did give it some depth, and I think that works. I've got the light on the top of the hill, and the faded mountains or trees in the background. And it looks like this guy has achieved some height. That's the Lamy medium point pen I'm using there with waterproof ink. Diatramentis, oh my goodness, I never pronounced that. Anyway, some waterproof ink. I'm using the smaller side of it, so I'm actually using almost like a fine nib type thing. I've got it flipped on its side, and I'm doing very as fine a line as I can. Nice thing about inking after the watercolor creates some interesting lines, and you essentially just trace around them. Like in the case of the trees here, my job is pretty easy. Just trace around where the paint ran to. It's going pretty fast there, but I actually used a pastel pencil to highlight the top of the rocks there. Oh, by the way, if you this painting actually sold on Etsy, so but if you are looking for this sort of thing, go on over to my Etsy, and I have some other paintings up there similar to this, if you're interested. While I'm tracing around this too, I'll promote my Patreon page. And I provide longer videos, a little more description, talk about brushes, etc. So there's another thing too, and I'll put the link up, or at least the details of my Patreon page up at the end of this. So when the when the paint was drying, I wasn't filming, and I actually put a light glaze of ultramarine Payne's Gray over the front of that, just to darken up the foreground and provide more of a highlight on the hill. So the tape is off. That means I'm done. So thanks so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Please click and subscribe. And we'll see you again soon.